Mankind has cumulatively agreed that the dark and the unknown are what we fear the most. In this series, we have now gone 20 episodes exploring all things unsolved and unexplained. As always, if you want to send in your story, be sure to do so by using the email or the website that you can find in the description down below. Before I get into today's video, I wanted to shout out Smoke Cartel. They're giving away a $50 care package to one of you guys. And all you have to do to enter is comment on this video, be sure that you're subscribed, we can both check, and be sure to tag a friend in the comments to enter. This contest ends after 24 hours, so be sure to do this as fast as you can and tag as many as you can. We'll pick a winner of the contest and we'll send them a $50 care package, which includes everything you'll see in the picture on screen. At the end of the video, I'll also have a little bit of video talking about this as well. A few years ago, I had an experience that scared the holy crap out of me. My family had a tendency to take in local kids from rough families, with the parents' permission, of course. My buddy Joey had been living with my family for about 2 or 3 years at the time. One of his friends, who we'll call DB, would come over from time to time to play the Xbox or just hang out. At the time this story takes place, DB had gotten kicked out of his apartment. He moved in with my family to live in the building, a small storage shed that my brother had turned into his man cave. Though he started out as Joey's weird friend, he and I became pretty close. When I was helping move in, I came across a leather-bound journal. I asked him about it, and all he said was, "Whatever you do, don't look in it." Since I'd already found several of his sex toys, I assumed it was full of personal stuff, which I really didn't want to know. A few weeks went by, and some things happened and he ended up sleeping with my fiancé. So, still upset, I read it. The first page was a warning not to read any further. I don't remember exactly what it said. On the next page was an extremely complex symbol, stars and circles and some old language I couldn't recognize. It wasn't a pentagram, but something similar. The rest of the book was blank. I just assumed he was a mega nerd and closed it. After confronting him about my fiancé, he was so apologetic and he seemed sincere. We were all really drunk when it happened. So I forgave him and we started hanging out a lot. At one point I told him I'd read the book and he asked what I'd seen. I told him and he seemed relieved when I said the book was blank. He said it was best that I couldn't see the rest of it. I just shrugged it off as more nerd stuff or something and called him Merlin and Gandalf all week. A few days after this, my fiancé at the time ended up regularly getting with him and telling me about it. I only stayed with her because of sex, if I'm honest. Figured I could get laid a few more times before we broke up completely. But then Joey found out. Though we were in an open relationship, he threatened to tell my family. This is where my story begins. After finding out Joey's intentions, DB told us he was going to talk with his contact and figure out what to do. After a bit of arguing, he let me tag along. He asked if I had any incense, and I did. I assumed some more nerd stuff, and he took my incense, chalk, his book, and a walking stick up to the road about a quarter mile from my house. He drew a circle on the road with chalk. He drew some symbols around the circle, then drew a larger circle that he stood in. Then, he placed incense at different symbols and lit it. Then placed the stick in the smaller circle, while he stood in the larger circle. He opened his book. As he flipped through it, I could see words on the pages that I hadn't before. He told me, "You may want to cover your ears," and I pretended to do so. I couldn't quite hear what he was saying, but as soon as he started speaking, I immediately noticed a change. My neighbor's horses started getting spooked. I saw birds fly out of trees, and this was at about midnight. I saw a possum run out of the woods, a raccoon run out of the woods, and even the bugs around the streetlights take off in every direction. The entire time I had a sense of impending doom and an unexplainable fear that just wouldn't go away. It seemed like every living thing wanted to get away from us. Then, DB began to speak. It didn't sound like him though. It almost sounded like Bane from The Dark Knight Rises or Hermerus Mora from Skyrim. But scarier. It was as if DB was talking to himself in two different voices. That is when I really plugged my ears. I was afraid of what the thing had to say. After a few minutes, DB tapped me on the shoulder and said, "It's time to go home." I asked what it said and he told me Joey wouldn't say anything. We went home, and a few days later, my fiance ran off with DB. Looking back, I still get chills thinking about that thing to this very day. One night, when I was around 8 or so, I'd gone to bed early. I had school in the morning, you know. I slept pretty good that night, all things considered, but woke up out of a sound sleep at some point in the wee hours of the morning. I did not have an alarm clock at this point in time, so there's no telling what time it was. All I knew was the sky was black outside my window. In any case, I woke up to this feeling of being watched. I thought it might be one of my little brothers standing by my bed, as they tend to come to me instead of my parents for comfort when they had nightmares in the middle of the night. I didn't feel any kind of threat, or scared in any kind of way, but I slowly cracked my eyes to see who was there. There was nothing. I opened my eyes all the way, and only then did I notice what looked like the outline of a thin older man with glasses and a long-sleeved shirt on. The odd part was that this image was completely see-through, except for the outline of his body, glasses, and clothes, which glowed in several shades of blues and greens that shimmered and shifted like the northern lights. He just stood there, with a soft smile on his face, about a foot away from my bedside, just watching me. My father had been known to come in and check on his kids in the night sometimes, so I sleepily asked, "Papa?" Thinking this was the case. The next thing I knew, it was morning, and Mom was waking me up to get us all ready for the bus. I asked my dad if he checked on us during the night, but he denied it. He listened to my story, but said nothing in reply, probably chalking it up to my dreams or my imagination. But I know what I saw. Years later, I brought it up again at my dad's house, and he seemed to think it may have been the spirit of my great-great-grandfather, who had passed away the month before I had been born. Our great-great-grandma was still around, so when I had the chance, I asked her about her husband. She described a thin, spectacled man who was sweet as could be, always with a smile on his face. She proceeded to tell me that he'd passed away from lung cancer, but had he had the chance to meet us, he would have spoiled my brothers and I rotten. Knowing this, I'm certain that's who came to visit me that night. I have lived in my current house for about 7 years. It's a 2-bedroom building, and just myself and my husband live here. I have always felt something in this house. When we first moved in, I kept hearing a scratching noise coming from our attic. We checked and there were no signs of any rodents. Eventually, I asked whatever it was to leave my house, and the sound seemingly stopped. Over the years, there have been strange events like my TV turning itself on, lights flickering, strange noises from outside, and seeing people out of the corner of my eye. I have not been too bothered because it felt like whatever it was quite peaceful. That was until last week. I have recently changed jobs and have an unusual sleeping pattern, so not to disturb my husband some nights, I will sleep in our spare bedroom. There is definitely something different about this room. The temperature can suddenly drop, and it has a general eerie vibe. I have my 2 cockatiels in this room, and quite often in the early hours they will get spooked and start flapping about. When I sleep in there, I keep a dim lamp on because I am too afraid to sleep in there in the complete darkness, and I also wear an eye mask. Last week, I went to sleep in the spare bedroom with my eye mask on and dim lamp. I was on my back and just drifting off to sleep when I felt some anxious feeling. All of a sudden, I snapped out of drifting to sleep and woke up. I opened my eyes and could just see a small part of the room through a gap in the bottom part of my eye mask. I looked up, and to my side, I made eye contact with someone stood over me, who instantly rushed towards me and was trying to strangle me through the bed covers. I couldn't move, and all I could see was this person's eyes. Even though this was all I could see, I knew it was an older lady, and I sensed nothing but pure hatred from this being towards me. It was over quite quickly, and it was terrifying. In the past, I have experienced sleep paralysis and have been attacked by shadow people, so I put it down to this, that I didn't realize I was asleep. I told my sister about it, and she was terrified, telling me that if it was a ghost, it was not a nice one. She said it could be sleep paralysis, but it's definitely plausible, but with all the shadow people that I've seen, it might not be. I clearly made eye contact with them and saw their eyes in full color. I was wondering if anyone has experienced anything similar, or if they have any tips on how I can protect myself from this happening again. Any help would be appreciated. Thank you for sharing my story. When I was a little girl, first or second grade I believe, we moved to a small farming town in Colorado. I attended elementary school there and did not have a lot of friends, until one little girl with reddish-brownish hair asked me to play. We soon became good friends, and she asked me to spend the night with her. I agreed, and my parents brought me over to her apartment. Her family lived in the apartments across from the school. Her parents actually owned them, and there was only 4 units, 2 on top and 2 on bottom. Her sister stayed in the unit below her parents. She was in her early 20s. She also had a younger sister who was in preschool. A little while after I got there, her parents said they were going out to a local bar for the evening. Apparently they did this a lot and left us there alone. They told us that her sister was downstairs if we really needed anything and gave us the number to the bar. This was the era before cell phones, which shows my age. They left and locked the door behind them. Her sister left an hour later saying she was going to get her friend and would be back shortly. I have never been alone like that without someone watching me, so I was already a little frightened. They had this painting of a lady in the middle of the room. Brandy said it was there when they moved in, and her parents liked it so they left it up. It was so creepy. It seems like wherever you went, the eyes, they seemed to follow you. We started talking about typical girl stuff until we heard a knock at the door. We both jumped as it was a loud knock. When the police are at your door, they kind of knock very hard and persistent. We both went over and looked out the window, turned on the lights, and no one was there. We figured it was someone for her sister and realized she lived downstairs. We sat back down. Then the knock came again. This time we looked out. The light was off outside and we saw someone bent down looking in at us, but the eyes were blood red. We screamed and ran back to the couch and called her parents. The knocking stopped as soon as we picked up the phone. Her parents said it was probably her sister trying to scare us and not to worry. It happened one more time, and afterwards her sister came to the door and yelled for us to stop trying to get her in trouble. She had been gone and just got back. At this point, I was scared to death. Her sister went back downstairs and we sat in the living room talking. Brandy proceeded to tell me that her house was haunted and she has seen things ever since she was little. I laughed at her at first because she was serious. They had those old school wooden forks and spoons that people used to hang up on the wall. Well, they flew across the room at us. Now, I am scared to death. Needless to say, that frantic call got her parents home. After they were home, we were ready for bed. I wanted to go home, but they were in no shape to drive me. I had to go to the bathroom. As I walked out of the room to the bathroom, I heard a little boy cry, and that was when I saw a little boy crying and run into the closet. Not into the closet through the door. I called my parents and went home. Later, I found out a boy, about 3 years old, had died there because his mother left him alone with no food or heat and never came back. He was so scared he hid in the closet, and that's where he died. I lost touch with Brandy after they moved, and when she was in middle school, I found her number and called. She says she was still being haunted by something or someone. She said she felt like it was evil, and her parents even had attempted to have an exorcism done. I lost track of her after that, though. I do wonder sometimes what happened.
In 1992, I rented a house in Fredericksburg, Virginia, following several years of living abroad. It was a rather pleasant house, a ranch design, in an older neighborhood. There were many large trees that gave shade in the summer, and a wooded area behind the house, along with friendly neighbors and a genuinely placid calm overall. It was a nice place to live. There was not a hint that this house was haunted by an active, though unhappy ghost. As ghost implies, a frightening specter in my mind, I think I prefer the term spirit. The house haunting was confirmed to be human. The haunting did not begin immediately. Months passed, perhaps a year. It began unannounced. There was no warning of any kind, nor even a hint of warning from the landlord. On what I recall as a very lovely late summer day, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our front entry door opened with a bang, and the loud chatter of swinging Venetian blinds. My wife and son were with me in our family room watching television. My daughter was serving in the military and was far off and unexpected. Our heads snapped sharply as we quickly looked at each other's faces, looking for a hint of understanding regarding of what was happening. There was none. 2 probabilities came to mind. The first being my daughter home on unexpected leave, with the intent of surprising us. The second was criminal home invasion. After a moment spent gathering my wits, I moved from the family room to the living room. I found our entry door wide open, the blinds which covered its window still swaying side to side. The door, for those prone to detail, opened inward. There was no apparent explanation for what had happened. That door was little used by our family and was kept locked. The door was rather difficult to open, as the door itself was simply stuck in the frame. It took a lot of effort to open, and when the door finally did, it popped free rather heavily as a result of being stuck or jammed, and the force it took to open it, the metal Venetian blinds would swing and sway and clatter. In all, annoying enough that our front door was almost never used. After that first experience, things changed. The front door continued to open, although not frequently. The back door would also be found open from time to time. Bedroom doors opened much more frequently though, and one bedroom in particular. As we were never in fear, and there was no show of hostility, we accepted our new reality. There may also have been an occasional noise during the night, but nothing of real note. We simply adopted whoever this was and often spoke to them with simple greetings or conversation. This came to an end for us in 1998, when it was time to return to my work abroad. Movers came to take away our belongings. While this went on, the lady living next door spoke to me over the fence and asked if anything unusual happened during our stay. I affirmed that it had. Then she told me the following. A woman and her daughter lived in that house in the years past. The girl, a high school student, was 16 or 17 years of age. On New Year's Eve, the girl wanted to attend a party. The mother declined because of severe ice storms. The girl went anyway. The mother waited up to early hours for her daughter to return before crying herself to sleep. The mother was awakened by crying and discovered her daughter sitting in the chair next to her bed. The girl sobbed, "Oh mother, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." The girl repeated her statement and then vanished. After 3 days of searching, the girl's car was located upside down in a canal used by a local power company to produce electricity. The girl's body was in the car, which had slid off the icy road into the frozen canal. The woman who told me this was the sister of the girl's mother. making her the aunt of the girl. They had lived side by side as neighbors as well as relatives. I recall all of this with great clarity. This is a true and accurate presentation of what I had experienced.
Back in 2008, I was on a hunting trip with my brother up near the Canadian-Michigan border. We had rented a cabin for a week, and we were looking forward to a nice quiet week until this monster spoiled it all. One night, after a day of being in the woods, we were tired and didn't feel like cooking up a meal, so I decided to jump in my truck and drive into town to get some pop and some grub while my brother stayed back to wash up. So, I drove into the town by myself, and was away about 45 minutes, probably not even a solid hour. I talked with the gal at the counter for a few, but I wanted to get back to feed my brother since he gets grouchy when he doesn't have food, and I didn't want him to be hacking on me. By the time I headed back, it was getting dark, and by the time I reached the cabin, the sun had already gone down all the way. I hit the road leading to the cabin and could see the silhouette of something big looking in one of the windows of the cabin. At first, I thought it was Everett since it looked like it was standing on two legs. But this thing looked to be too tall. So then I thought to myself, well, then it's a bear. I didn't want no bear coming around the cabin and causing trouble, so I decided to scare him off with my headlights. So I aimed my truck in his direction and flipped on my high beams. What I saw then wasn't a bear, it was a monster. When my lights hit it, it spun around and I saw the whole thing, and it was only standing on two legs. Now, you wanted my description of this thing, and I wish I had my camera handy so I could have just took a picture and gave it to you, but I wasn't expecting to see any type of monster out there. He was a big guy, like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons, but it wasn't any Sasquatch I was looking at. It looked more like a werewolf. He was more than 7 feet tall, based on how high his head was above the top of the window. He was brown, like a chocolate lab, but the coat was different. It was shaggy like a wolf and had lighter spots in the chest and legs. He had big muscles like he went to the gym. His chest was really wide and his shoulders looked like Brock Lesnar, a real musclehead. He had arms that looked like they could kill you easily, and these long, fingered hands with big nails at the ends, and his neck was as thick as my waist almost. Even with all the power in his body, that ain't what scared the hell out of me. It was his face. He looked like he was madder than hell about something. Maybe because I interrupted him. Maybe that was just his attitude all day. Who knows? But those eyes, they will haunt me all my days. I believe in good and evil, and this thing was pure evil. The light reflected off his eyes like a night predator, and the rest of his face looked like a wolf, snout, teeth, nose, ears, and all just like a wolf. When this thing spun around to face me, it pivoted on his two back legs and turned just like a human would. First, he turned his waist to look at me, then pivoted face me entirely. My body went numb and I started to shake. What in the hell was this thing? A werewolf? I don't know. The only thing I could think was that it was trying to get to my brother, and he didn't have any idea what this thing was. So, I started honking my horn and flashing my lights to get it to try to go away. Then that thing put its hands over its eyes to cover it like a person would. It gnashed its teeth at me and then ran off into the woods, and it was still on two legs. I pulled right the hell up to the cabin as close as I could, grabbed my mag light and ran into the door. Left the truck running and I was calling to my brother like a crazed man. Everett ran into the living room yelling at me, asking what the hell I was doing. And I told him something was out there and we had to leave now. Luckily, my brother's a trusting man. 43 years of living with me, he should know when I'm serious, right? So we grabbed our rifles and mag lights and took off into the truck with haste. As we ran to the truck, we could both hear something big running in the woods next to the cabin and the loudest growl I've ever heard. That growl almost shook my insides. We tossed the guns to the truck and jumped in. Everett was shining his light into the forest, but he didn't see anything.
Then we took off. We got the hell out of there. On the way back into town, I told my brother what I had seen and he just shook his head. I think he was letting it soak in. He looked at me and said, "Arn, I think you saw yourself a werewolf." I looked up at the sky and it wasn't a full moon. I don't know what I saw that night. We went back during the day a few days later. After going to church, I might add, and praying a lot. We got our stuff and then talked to the gentleman that rented us the cabin and told him what I had seen. He swore that he had never heard of anything like that around that before, but I got the impression he was lying to us. That's why I never go into the woods alone or unarmed anymore.
I went to a small school, better known as Hyatt High School. It's in Louisiana, and it's on my paranormal websites. It has a history of strange stuff happening, but I never noticed anything strange when I attended the school. It was shut down until one day. Some friends and I were in the gym, just goofing off, doing nothing serious. I distinctly remember hearing whispering like little kids whispering, to which I paid no attention to. Then, we had a brilliant idea of going into the basement, the dark basement. I'm not sure why we chose to, but the whole time I felt as if we were being watched, but I still didn't pay any attention to it. We went down below and the air was incredibly thin and cold, which is weird for Louisiana weather, but it just felt that way. There was a door on the other side of the room which leads to an exit. It was an old white door, and I remember putting my ear up to it because I heard a strange noise coming from the other side. Okay, this is going to sound crazy, but this is what I heard. It sounded like hooves trotting on a hard surface, similar to cobblestone, and it got closer and louder until, in my opinion, it sounded like someone slapped the door as hard as they could. We took off running, of course, but it doesn't stop there. There are these huge metal screen doors that were in place of the equipment room, which is located near the basement. As I ran by them, the door flung open and hit me. These doors aren't little either. They're massive. The whole time I felt like I was being chased. When we got out, I felt so relieved. Like, I'm going to use this term evil thing, wasn't there anymore. I also noticed 3 distinctive marks that look like scratches alongside my upper right chest as well. I haven't been near that door or that place in general ever again. If someone can explain this to me, or tell me what they think had happened, I'd very much appreciate that. So back when I was in early college, there was this girl who hung out with my group of friends. She lived in a mobile home park. It's kind of like a trailer park, but they aren't trailers. Anyway, we were hanging out until pretty late, and we got to drop her off at home. She lived at the very back of the park, and the only road that's there does a weird roundabout to get out of the park. So after she gets inside, my friend who's driving just says screw that noise, and just reverses back. It's like 1 or 2 a.m., so no one's going to be driving, so no biggie. While we were reversing, there was a girl outside walking the direction we were going. She was wearing a nightgown with no shoes or socks outside. Her hair was a mess and she was covered almost face to toe with what looked like blood and cuts. Her skin was pretty pale, but not unusual. While we reversed, she looked directly at us and she didn't even change her expression. We were dead silent in the car until we backed up far enough to turn around and get out of the park. When we finally stopped to turn, my buddy said, "You think we should have gave her a ride?" Me and my brother both said screw that and drove away. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed these creepy stories that couldn't be explained, be sure to hit that like button as it helps me out a ton. Be sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, and never miss a new video, because I do them almost every single day, and all things natural and supernatural. If you have a story you'd like to hear in a future video, be sure to send it in to swampdweller.net or the email that you can find in the description down below. I would love to share your story with everyone here in the swamp. Once again, much love to Smoke Cartel, who is holding a giveaway here on the Swamp Dweller channel. All you have to do to enter is to comment down below, share this video with a friend, and we'll pick somebody in 24 hours. So, be sure to do that, and show Smoke Cartel some love in the comments as well. Let them know we really much appreciate what they're doing for us. It's crazy to think that we're 20 episodes in to the Unexplained series. Mind-blowing to me to think that we have enough people sending in stories so much that we can get this far. And trust me, we have many more coming. As well as a new park ranger video coming soon as well. I know you guys have been waiting patiently. I'll see you guys soon with another creepy video.